Hey everyone, I'm rather Incoherent, and today I want to talk about a deck I just ran through Carcosa and a deck I'm about to run through Dark Matter, but not specifically to talk about those decks, but to use them as an example of how I talk about decks, why I talk about them the way that I do, and what I'll do in the future to fix them. Not the decks, but the discussion of the decks. Something I've heard before, and something I'm hearing again recently that I'm taking to heart this time, is that I really should show middle ground decks. This is not something I value very much when I'm planning a deck, but it is important. Because when I'm planning a deck, I intuitively understand what is more important. But when I show someone a final deck, they don't have that same intuitive understanding, whether it's because I planned the deck or because I played the deck. This is obvious to me what I upgrade first. It's No Stone 5, by the way. That's in the name of the deck. That's the shotgun support. I find the shotgun. But it's wholly unintuitive when the only note on the deck list is don't say Haster, you'll take one horror. Which I don't even write that way, right? I wrote it as a riddle. If you don't know, you don't know. It's just gibberish. So the big thing that I've done wrong in the past is I haven't shown the middle step. I haven't shown what the core experience is. I haven't shown what it looks like towards the middle of a campaign, because that's intuitive and obvious to me, but it's entirely lost on somebody who's just handed the final product. So to that end, going into future campaigns, I'll actually be showing not just the start, but I'll be showing the core of the deck, whatever experience that is. On some characters, like the Alessandra I played through Hemlock, that's gonna be an alarming 39 experience. The deck build has to be wrong. Your deck core cannot be more experienced than most campaigns give. That's not true. That's super untrue. That's like only more experience than Dunwich. Even Carcosa gives 42. But like, you get my point. Your deck core can't be 39. And in this case, my deck core was 15. It was Pathfinder, Segment of Onyx, and 2 No Stones. These perceptions were just early upgrades I took to get more draw because I couldn't afford the second No Stone in the previous upgrade. The core of the concept is literally just get off the ground running with it in the thick of it and buy 2 No Stone 5s so that Leo finds the shotgun. We had a Leo in our Carcosa as our fighter who used one shotgun. He did not have a second shotgun. There were not backup weapons. He had all of the support. He came damn close to killing Haster in like 4 attacks. Had it not been for the auto fail and the fact you literally can't kill him without stopping to let the Cleaver do their job, it would have been pretty damn close to a 1-round kill on the final boss. And that's part of why we brought the shotgun to Carcosa. It's because very few campaigns just let you show up and like waste Azathoth. It's not gonna happen, but Haster will let you do that in Carcosa. So that's why this is happening. And this might seem like a weird thing to say as the core of the deck, but the whole point of this run was as a send-off to Shotgun. We felt like Shotgun was just a bad card, so we wanted to give it everything we possibly could. In the final scenario, our Leo was at 8 cards left in deck when I was at 16. I was just giving the Leo my draw to find more support for the damn gun, because that's the core of the deck. These No Stone 5s, as soon as I have both, the deck core is complete. And then to go up to like a more reasonable experience, what I'm getting immediately afterwards, I'm making Practice Makes Perfect better. I'm getting better draw. I'm getting my Bulletproof Vest to not die. And I have random things like Magnifying Glass coming in, just because it's a 1 experience upgrade that makes the deck better that I can get my hands on, before eventually we finish out like this, where my final deck plan was 44 experience, only a little bit higher, having expected to upgrade the second Cryptic Writings. And that whole process makes more sense when I show you the middle steps. I fully take that criticism to heart, but I want to sort of make a case, not for like me doing the right thing. I've been doing it wrong. I need to provide those middle steps to you when I'm showing off a deck. But I want to explain why I make 42 experience decks. I think maybe the original reason I wasn't super receptive to the criticism is because a lot of people were like, 40 experience deck, 50 experience deck, what's that even useful for? That's ridiculous. Give us a real deck. And I disagree with that entirely, because having a deck plan helps me be realistic about the deck in multiple ways. The first way it helps me be realistic is it makes sure that I'm aware, because if I just make the best level 0 deck I can, then when I upgrade, I might have to choose between Dr. Milan or Janae Beauregard, or buying a Charisma and becoming more setup heavy. When I make the final deck first, I can look at the big picture and actually balance my assets and economy correctly going in. It's really important that if my 40 experience deck pretty much only adds expensive assets to the original deck, then my original deck is going to need more economy in the event pile than it actually runs in its own deck, because it's going to grow into that economy. That's one of the things that's really important about making a final deck plan. That's why it has value in terms of deck optimization to plan out what your deck will look like in endgame. The other reason I did it is sort of the same thing but a different angle on it. Deduction and Perception are really valuable to upgrade. It's important that you're upgrading them. And it's like the easiest to do that in Seeker because they're so strong and Practice Makes Perfect duplicates them. But if I were to go over to like, say, a Guardian deck plan, there's a lot of Guardians that would be happy with Vicious Blow too, but I would play them, I would get to like 50 experience, and my Flamethrower deck simply would not have a Vicious Blow level 2 in it. I have spent all my experience on other stuff. So by making the final deck plan, I can see what the final experience cost actually is if I'm really gonna upgrade those skills. And if it's too high for the campaign, then I can start cutting it down and figuring out what needs to go to actually upgrade Vicious Blow and make a reasonable balanced deck that will get everything I want before the campaign ends. So you might look at a 54 experience deck and be like, wow, that's a ton, you probably won't get that much. But the reality is that if you're full clearing most scenarios, you will get like 30 to 35 in Dunwich. It's been a while since we played Dunwich. Around just over 40 in Carcosa, and then in pretty much every other campaign except for Dream Eaters, I feel like it's 50 plus experience, like at least 45. And then there's tons of characters that have ways of cheesing out more experience. Down the Rabbit Hole, Arcane Research, Karen's Obel, where depending on the campaign, like if you're playing a Dexter Drake and you make a 70 experience deck for Edge of the Earth as your plan, honestly, you're probably gonna get way past that, right? So depending on the campaign, 54 experience is completely reasonable, and I know for a fact going to Dark Matter, I'm gonna get 54 experience. Here's the Tony Morgan deck I played in my very first run through Dark Matter. It was like the 5th campaign I played. You can tell I was new because I'm not running Karen's Obel. It had 59 experience without any experience boost. 54 is actually a modest expectation for a final deck in Dark Matter. It expects me to do well in the scenarios, but I expect that of myself. It's a reasonable deck plan for me. So I agree wholeheartedly that in the future, I need to start showing the pure deck core and a rough midpoint of campaigns to help understand what is shotgun support, what was important in this deck, how is it shotgun support, as well as just level 0, because it does not intuitively flow when you show the starter deck and the final deck what the order is. And I will change that going forward when I do my videos about this stuff. And the reason I wanted to make this video is twofold. The first is to address like the less constructive criticism that suggests a high experience deck plan isn't valuable. It absolutely is, and you should be making one. It will help you avoid deck building traps where you plan for things that won't actually happen because you haven't really looked at all the stuff you want, and it will help you avoid deck building pitfalls where you end up making a more expensive final deck than early deck where your economy doesn't work out in the end game. The second point of this isn't so much to like make an announcement that I'm going to do better at explaining decks, but to talk about how I view decks before I start talking about a lot of decks. Up until now on this channel, something I've tried to avoid doing too much, unless I was like hype and doing live deck building and exploring a concept that was new to me, is make a video talking about a character that, say, I haven't personally played, or haven't personally played since they've gotten a lot of support, and my experience would be meaningfully different had I played them now as opposed to 2 years ago. And the reason for that is simply because I don't feel that my opinion as an optimizer is particularly relevant if I have not personally been into the nuts and bolts of the deck, played it through a campaign, and gotten a feel for it. My recent deck review on Kaimani Jones was the second time I played them and the 4th time I saw them, I think. And I took a while before I felt confident on Kaimani. I've steamrolled a campaign as Alessandra. I'm currently putting her in C for fine because it was a 39 experience deck core that needed big money and power word to reliably be up 2 on the power word check every turn. And it felt like I had so many combo pieces, and even though it worked every time, I had no faith in it. Recently, I decided that I need to rework how I view my tier list. You might be shocked to see an F tier when I've argued that D tier shouldn't exist before. When my previous D tier was like just these 2 characters and Mina, right? That's because I've changed how I'm going to be using my tier list. I no longer think that ranking characters against the campaign is actually valid. And not valid, it's super valid, it's very valid. But I think that when you make a tier list about how characters do in the campaign in general, you end up even more top heavy than this, right? I had a tier list where I think it was like 65% of the characters were in B tier or above, like overwhelmingly top heavy. And there was almost nobody in D tier, there was no F tier, right? It was a tier list where it essentially, like the takeaway from the tier list would be, yeah, the characters are all pretty good, man. Like, that's the takeaway when you do relative to the campaign. The card pool's at a point where no one is bad, everyone is at least fine, and everyone can get through a campaign and win. My previous tier list was ranking characters based on how well they did in the campaign, and it created less diversity in the tier list, less stratification, less meaningful tiers, because everyone's doing well. This tier list is different, not so much in the ordering of the characters, the ordering is broadly similar. This tier list is different in that it's ranking them relative to each other. No one's F tier relative to the campaign, not even Lola. But Lola's absolutely F tier relative to the best characters in the game. So I was restructuring my tier list to be Investigator relative as opposed to campaign relative. And when I was doing it, there were like everything feels hard. It's apples to oranges. It's so hard to say directly one character's better than another. But especially with the characters lower, because I don't want to say anyone's bad. Even having Leo in like the bottom of C, I feel really bad about. We just played with Leo. He had a wonderful time. He was also in Carcosa with a 1 foot, and he could never fail to draw a shotgun, so of course he did great. It's something important to understand that when I make the tier list this way, a character being lower in the tier list doesn't even indicate they struggle. I think everyone in C tier and above will pretty much beat the campaign reliably. I think C tier characters can struggle, and it's not really until B tier that I think your character's expecting to do well and win. But in every tier, it feels really hard when you're directly moving characters next to each other. How do you compare Vincent to Carson to Carolyn to Patrice to Silas? Is it Flex Silas or Fighter Silas? Which one's better? Also, I have no idea where to put Kohaku. Ignore him. If anyone's about to come shout that Kohaku's bad or that he's seriously underrated, dude, I have no idea. I've played alongside Kohaku, and it left me with no strong opinions about the character at all, which means he can't be that bad. And like the build could probably be refined a shitload, so it can probably be a lot better than this. But the thing I'm getting at here, the announcement that this video is really for, is that I was considering making a video about entirely these 2 bottom tiers, where I was gonna briefly go through each of these decks that I have, because I've planned decks for pretty much everyone, and even characters, if I don't have a planned deck for them, it means I either have a played deck for them, or I've gotten frustrated and deleted the planned deck. I'm sure that's happened with Marie multiple times. So I was previously planning on having one big bottom of the tier list video, and being like, just shout at me what you think, and I will take it all into consideration and try to look at it over time. But that's like a huge amount of feedback to get in one video. It's gonna be a hassle. Just the way viewership works, whoever's first in the video, everyone's gonna talk about them. Whoever's like 4th in the video, there'll be a couple responses. And if Hank's the last person I talk about, no one's gonna tell me why Hank should be above D tier. So since people were asking me to talk about characters I have lower in the tier list specifically, I'm going to make live deck building videos. Not even deck building videos. I'm gonna make live videos discussing deck plans. Sometimes it'll just be one deck plan where I like show the final deck. I'm like, look, this is what Lola does at her best. 50 experience, full deck, here's what Lola's got, and it's still shit. I don't even want to think about how she starts, because look how bad she ends. She can't start good. And that'll be it for some characters. For other characters, I can show you like 10 different Calvin decks. I just need to ask Andrew, hey Andrew, send me all of your Calvin decks. And then I can show you so many different Calvins. And all of them will have different problems. Or maybe they'll all have the same problem. I think they'll have the same problem, because it's really Calvin's character card and card pool. Doesn't really matter how he builds them, he's sort of stuck in the same box. So there'll be some videos where I show you a bunch of different builds for the same character. There'll be some videos where I show you a final build and a level 0 build, and really get into like how their power curve is over the course of a campaign. And there'll be some characters with like Marie and Rita where I show a couple different builds, but mostly I talk about them in a mechanical sense, in terms of like game theory and what their ability and card pool really can do. And it's less specifically about their deck than it is about the way they play the game and the role they inhabit. So in this upcoming series where I talk about the lowest ranked investigators, and if it does well, I'll probably keep going up and make the opposite videos, right? Try to sway me on C and B tier with the middle ranked investigators. Try to tell me that I'm overhyping A and above, right? But I really want to talk about the lower ranked investigators, because lower ranked investigator is the one where it's most likely that I'm actually underranking them, right? That I'm missing something and getting it wrong. And conversely, I've also think I've seen a comment that had the opposite perspective, where there are people who are like, I don't get why Rita's not terrible. Or can you make an Amina deck that's not garbage? And by the way, you can. I confidently think Amina's better than Jim, and a 4-head Mystic can beat any campaign in the game with mono Mystic card pool and no ability. So going forward for the next couple of weeks, whenever I do an analysis video, expect it to be on one of these characters that are currently in the bottom of the tier list. I might go even a little bit above and talk about characters where it might be a hot take that I have them above my D tier. And depending on how people feel about this and what the reception is to this sort of concept, I will maybe continue the series throughout the entire card pool as we like close out November and December. But for now, I really want to talk about the low ranked investigators. 1, why I think they can beat any campaign, and 2, why I think they're the worst in the game. I'm coming for you, Bob. You're getting another video. Anyway, that's it for now. I've been Rather Incoherent. I hope you enjoyed hearing me ramble. Like, comment, subscribe. That YouTube nonsense does help the channel grow. I greatly appreciate it, but not nearly so much as I appreciate the great people over on Patreon who keep this channel running. Thank you, and see you in the next one.